إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to our class in the 40 Hadith of Imam Nawawy rahimahullah ta'ala. We have reached Hadith number 10. The Hadith goes as follows. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه, on the authority of Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. قال, he said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, أيها الناس, O people, إن الله طيب لا يقبل إلا طيبا. Verily, indeed, Allah is good and does not accept anything other than good. And so, here the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is good and He does not accept anything less than good. Okay? This shows us that when it comes to getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether it is worship, whether it is specific types of worship such as sacrificing, giving in charity, and so on, anything that you give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be something good. You cannot give or intend to give something for the sake of Allah that is evil or that is filthy or bad. Why? Because of this hadith and many other hadith like it that tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only accepts what is good. And then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ أَمَرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ بِمَا أَمَرَ بِهِ الْمُرْسَلِينَ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded the believers that which He has commanded the messengers. This, the scholars, they say, shows that even though the messengers and the prophets are very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and even though they are the best of creation, the responsibility is still there. What responsibility? To worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. In other words, in Islam, there is no such thing as reaching a level where you do not have to worship, fast, praise Allah, and so on. There is no such thing. You will worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until your last breath as a Muslim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينُ, worship your Lord until al-yaqeen, death comes. So, even the messengers who are the highest level of mankind, even they are commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what they are commanded to do is the same that the believers are commanded to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَقَالَ اللَّهُ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى يَا أَيُّهَا الرُّسُلُ كُلُوا مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَاعْمَلُوا صَالِحًا إِنِّي بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ عَلِيمٌ. Meaning, all messengers eat from the good and do righteous good deeds. In the same way that you will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the believers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنِّي بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ عَلِيمٌ, I see that which you do, or I have knowledge, I have knowledge of that which you do. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware, has knowledge about what they do, it can be understood in two ways. The effect of that can be felt in two ways. It could be in a way where it is reassuring, meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that He is aware of what we do, even if no one else sees us. Even if no one else sees us, even if no one else gives appreciation or acknowledgement, the one that sees what we do is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that is echoed throughout the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّا لَا نُضِيعُ أَجْرَ مَنْ أَحْسَنَ عَمَلًا, meaning that we will never let the good deeds of the good people go to waste. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remember, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows appreciation when it comes to people who do good. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ شَاكِرًا عَلِيمًا, as mentioned in the Quran. So it could be understood in that way, where it gives hope that I do not care about what people say. What matters is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. And also it could be in the opposite, because if you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything that you do, you become more mindful of your actions, because you know that not only does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala know, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold me accountable for what I say. So it comes from both sides, and it helps keep the Muslim, the believer, balanced. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ اللَّهُ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُلُوا مِنَ طَيِّبَاتِ مَا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ. This is also a verse in the Quran which means, "O you who believe, eat from that which is good." The halal that is good, eat from that. So you'll see that the command is the same. يَا أَيُّهَا الرُّسُلُ كُلُوا مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ and يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُلُوا مِنْ طَيِّبَاتِ مَا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ. So this is the same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with both with the messengers and the believers. This is one part. The second part of this hadith is where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, ثُمَّ ذَكَرَ الرَّجُلَ. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned a very specific individual. Okay, as an example. And this, if you remember in the previous classes, we said that the Prophet ﷺ is the best amongst teachers, because the way that he teaches the companions is in many different ways. And this is a reflection to how people learn. Some people, they learn through a khutbah, through a lecture, for the teacher to stand in front of the person and talk. Other people, they'll learn more when you engage them. If you ask them questions and they get a chance to respond. And you'll see the Prophet ﷺ uses many different techniques, different ways of getting the message across. Some people, you might explain to them the rules of something and they will not be able to visualize it until you tell them, I'll give you an example. So you give them an example so they can implement the things that they learned into and see it in that example that you give. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ is doing here. So he gives the example. He says, he mentions a man, يُطِيلُ السَّفَرَ. This man has traveled, lengthened his travel. And he's traveled for a long time. أَشْعَثَ أَغْضَرَ. The Arabs, they say when a person's hair is in a mess and they haven't taken care of it, no comb, nothing, they say this person, they refer to that person as ash'ath al-ras, that this person's hair is in that state. Aghbara, they say that this comes from the dust that comes from when a person is traveling, especially back in the day when your means was either on foot or on an animal. And if you're traveling in that part of the world, in the Sahara, in the desert, people will be able to see those traces on you. Okay, so safar, traveling in general, it is not something easy. There's difficulty, especially back in the day. So you can feel just by the way that the Prophet ﷺ is describing this man, you can feel his fatigue, him being tired, traveling for some time, not being able to take care of his appearance. So this man is in a difficult state, right? And we know that being in a difficult state is the time when the dua is accepted. And we know that when a person reaches out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by raising their hands, it also adds to the likelihood that the dua will be accepted. So this man is also traveling, and we know when you're traveling, your dua is more likely to be accepted. So this man has many things going for him, many things that would otherwise make it likely that the dua is accepted. And the Prophet ﷺ says, يَمُدُّ يَدَيْهِ, he stretches out his hands إِلَى السَّمَاءِ, towards the heavens. And he says, Ya Rab, Ya Rab. And he makes the dua. And we know that when a person says, Ya Rab, using one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is Ar-Rab, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers. However, there's a reason that this man's, in particular, his dua is not being answered. What is it? The Prophet ﷺ answers it. He says, وَمَطْعَمُهُ حَرَامٌ. His food is haram. Either the thing that he's eating is haram itself, or it comes from haram means. Right? Sometimes you might have something that is haram because itself, like lahmul khinzir, eating pork is haram. And sometimes there are certain things like the meat of a cow, it is halal, but if you don't slaughter it in a proper way, it becomes haram. So it might be that this person is eating haram or something that has not been prepared in the right way. Either way, what he's consuming is haram. وَمَشْرَبُهُ haram, and his drinking is haram. Again, it could be that he's drinking something that he shouldn't be drinking, or it could be that it comes from a source where it is not permissible for him. For example, if this person steals and you steal a glass of water, water is halal, but because you stole it and it did not belong to you, then it becomes haram. وَمَلْبَسُهُ haram, and his clothing is haram. Again, there are certain clothes that are haram for Muslims, men and women. Or it could also be that the clothes were stolen, or in some way it became haram. So you see that not only is his food haram, but his drinking is haram, and his clothing is haram. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, وَهُدِّيَ بِالْحَرَامِ, and he has been submerged completely in haram, meaning that it, from all directions, every interaction that he does is a haram interaction, an interaction that takes him further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, فَأَنَّا يُسْتَجَابُ لِذَلِكَ, then how can that be answered, or such a person be answered? So subhanAllah, this hadith is very scary because it reflects on the lives that we live after. Everyone wants the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We pray, we fast, we do all these things. But this hadith shows us that we also need to be thinking about the basics, meaning that it is not enough for a person to just pray all the salats in the masjid. It is not enough for them to be fasting in the month of Ramadan. They need to be thinking about their income, because that is something that will be asked on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Where did they get their money from? Did they get it from riba, from interest? Did they get it from haram means? Because if that is the case, then it becomes an obstacle to dua. Literally, this hadith is telling us that this man's dua will not be accepted because he is involved in haram. So if you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you, to bring you out of a difficult situation, the first thing that you need to be doing before the dua itself, it is cutting ties with the haram. Cutting ties with the haram. Because it's only once you cut your ties and you leave off the haram that your du'as will start to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you see that there's different aspects that are mentioned. Not just his income, but his food as well. Not just the money that he has, but the clothes that he's wearing. So it shows that everything will be accounted for, and it comes back to that verse in the Quran that we mentioned, إِنِّي بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ عَلِيمٌ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware. So this man's dua, which in other cases would have been accepted, he's saying, Ya Rab, Ya Rab. He is stretching his hands up. The fact that he is making dua, we can understand from this dua, from this hadith, that it is a man who knows who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Otherwise he wouldn't make dua in such a way. But again, what is preventing his dua to materialize, to become a reality, it is not out of his own actions. So this hadith teaches us many different lessons. From amongst those lessons is that it is very important that we take ourselves to account before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings us to accountability. So inshallah, with that we will stop here and we will continue inshallah hopefully next week. I wish to remind brothers and sisters that tomorrow inshallah is Yawm Arafah, and it is a time that we should make the most in fasting. هذا وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم.